Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's a J Gemini. Hey, tonight I wanted to go ahead and end up bringing you another interesting knife overview / review. And wanted to go ahead and throw something on the table that is kind of unique and a little bit of a newer company. Just kind of wanted to give you my overall thoughts. What I like, what I love, what I dislike, and if it applies, what's rubbish about this knife. So without further ado, let's jump right in and take a look at this. This is a Kansept Shard. Now, Kansept, just really quick, if you've never heard of the brand, there's a reason why. Essentially, Kansept was actually started by a splinter group that actually ended up coming from Kaiser knives out of China. So this does mean that this is a Chinese knife. And it was actually ended up going ahead a group that was founded by Kim Ming, which you can actually see maybe right there. Yep. Kim Ming, who is a designer that worked for Kaiser, as well as a lady that ended up going ahead and running basically all of the social media platforms. Like, the first person I learned about when I learned about Kansept was her. I thought she was the founder, and she was. She's kind of the co-founder, but she was basically like a nameplate for Kaiser. She's the person that everybody knew for Kaiser, and she ended up going ahead and moving with Kim to found Kansept knives, as well as the engineers and other designers and craftsmen and stuff like that. So that's essentially Kansept. If you haven't heard of it, bring you really up to speed. Before we actually get into the knife itself, let me actually go ahead and do a size comparison here, get that out of the way. Here's some knives that I believe everybody is going to know about, either handled, seen, see other people. So this is your pair 3, is your mini bug out, and your 91mm Victorinox. So as we can see, this knife is definitely a little larger, but in an interesting twist. This knife, if you actually end up going ahead and looking at the size closed, you can see that it's very similar in the length, a little bit longer, but just barely, to our pair 3. But even though that's the case, when you open it up, you can see that it has a much longer blade. So very similar to the way the bug out and the paramilitary, if you put them blade by blade, they're almost equal, but the handle is much longer on the para. It's sort of the opposite here, where the handle is much equal, but you get a much longer blade. So what that means is that unlike the para 3, where the blade is stopping about here, it's actually running like the bug out all the way to the end. What that also, another thing to kind of keep in mind is your sort of tallness in the pocket. You're very much like a bug out, that sort of slim and trim, which is kind of hard to beat. Another thing that is kind of cool and slim and trim is if we look at, get the width out of the way, you can actually see butt to butt. They're actually almost identical in their width between the para and our Kansept Shard. But what's so cool is that's just at the most girthy part. If you look down here where it contours out, it's actually very slim. So this means that there's not a lot of surface area that is the most wide, which makes it very easy to slip in and out of the pocket. So, all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into what I like about the Kaiser Shard. So, first, to talk about the Kaiser Shard, what I like is the fit and finish. Let's be honest, there are a lot of Chinese knife companies, Civivi, that comes in a lot lower. Which is Civivi's more premium brand. Riot, definitely. Best Tech. And there's a couple ones, but Kaiser, of course, that ends up going ahead and really kind of just getting things right for fit and finish. But even with a brand like Kaiser, they had the Feist, which is one of their most popular designs. And they had some problems out of the gate with going ahead and making that flip. It felt gritty. It felt not so fun. Hold on, baby. All right, so we're back. Baby situation squared away. So where was I? Like I said, basically, Kansept, at least with this particular one, is getting some things right. You know, it has a good action in parts. You know, it doesn't go in and stick very easily. It's a very, you know, fast action. It takes hardly no effort whatsoever to go in and get it to open up. You can also open it up with the thumb. There you go. So centering's dead on. You know, no blade play really. So I mean, you know, there's some, you know, the grinds seem okay. So, you know, there's some different things that are going on here to like. Also, the, you know, design, it's pretty good. You know, you have a little bit of a little bit of a belly, a little bit of a flat here, and it's a modified sheep's foot. You know, some people are gonna love that, some people are not. I love it on my Medford, right? Which is more like a drop point style, but this is more like your sort of reverse Honto if you like the Osborne, you know. So, I mean, there's definitely some things that are going on here that are good, you know, about the knife that is to like. It's got all the bells and whistles as well. You know, you should have your lock bar insert. You have your still insert for the interface with the blade, bearings. So, you know, there's just some things going on here that are pretty okay. You know, there isn't anything wrong with. Another thing that I do like is with their designs, they're actually using a little bit more advanced materials than their you know, siblings or ex-siblings over at Kaiser. They're going ahead and throwing in things like Damascus or Zirconium Damascus or whatever they're calling it. Titanium Damascus, sorry, because that's a coin term, I guess. Is completely left my mind. Anyways, it's a coin term, so they actually have versions that have complete milling, and the milling is really good, really squared away with their other designs. So, you know, there's some good stuff there to like. But yeah, that's basically it. The design's pretty okay. You know, everything seems to be pretty, you know, point on that you'd want from a knife. You know, like I said, good centered. The grinds seem okay, for sure. It has a, you know, good action. That's just, you know, you really can't go so much wrong. Going on and moving right into the next thing is what I love about the knife, and that actually is where it kind of falls into its problem, because there isn't anything I love about this knife. So let's go into what I dislike about the knife. The first thing I dislike about the knife is just little things. And I think what I have to actually say is it might actually be one whole thing. And it's the way that Kaiser, and because there's a lot of people from Kaiser in Kansept, the way Kansept does finishing. Let me explain. When I had my Wii 609, and I've had my Wii Malice, which I missed that knife and have to get it back. I had a big scratch on it, had to get rid of it because of my OCD. Hope to get one back. But anyways, all those knives, the lines, the edges are really crisp, but they're not sharp. There's like different materials, stone washing down here and like a satin up here. And then inside of here, it's matte on the Malice. And there's just these little finishing things where things are crisp and they line up. And with Kaiser, I kind of feel like it has this sort of just generic satin on the blade with sort of over-rounded edges. And it's okay, right? And I think that's a theme that also repeats to this knife as well, is the anodizing. Okay, it's this sort of brown, but in a bronze, but in certain part, it's like dull and brown. In other parts, it's shiny. And maybe some people like that, but like it being brown in here, and then this part being shiny, shiny bronze, it's kind of hard to pick up on camera. I mean, I think you can sort of see it there. But again, it's just like, it's okay. Another thing is just like little design aspects, like here. on the Wii, it is perfectly matched and crisp. You see how these would peak right here? It would peak on the mouse and then go straight. Well, this is like rounded off, and these parts have these more sharp peaks, so it just doesn't match up perfectly. And even on something like this Para 3, which I understand, well, they're both mass produced, so that's no excuse, right? That's like perfectly laid in there, perfect match. Just little aesthetics like this. And again, it is a little nitpicky, but when they're asking almost $300 for this knife, or the zirconium ones, and above 200, 20 for these knives itself, these are different things that I just expect. Just a next level when it comes to the finishing. The next thing is that with the knife itself, the pocket clip, the way they've designed this pocket clip is not smart. It's a single bolt, and it is a long bolt that runs, 2/3 of the way through this backspacer, so it is unsecure, but it's literally one bolt. On a lot of other knives that I've had that are milled out, they'll actually have a pocket, and the clip will be recessed in this pocket, and it'll be so tight and precisely milled with such high tolerances that once you put in your one bolt, it's completely in there, it's not moving. Not the case with this knife. They ended up going ahead and using one bolt, and then they used a ceramic ball that's pressed into the titanium up here, higher than the bolt. And then they've interfaced in the frame a little pocket, but that pocket is like 1.5 to 2 times bigger the size of that ball. So what that means is when you screw it down, even pretty tight, you can rather easily grab the pocket clip and you can move it back and forth, force it back and forth. Even on this, which is plastic and metal, you can't do that. Once you tighten it down, there's no moving it. It's completely solid. Same thing with a lot of other knives out there. So if they were going to use a single screw, I'd want them to make something that is just more solid, because what that means is that, one, they use T6, which I'm not a big fan of. Another thing I don't like, I mean, it's okay, right? It's the smallest of the dislikes. But when you're talking about this pocket clip situation, you can only get so much torque before you know that this is going to start stripping out. And even at that, if I force this, it will move back and forth. And then that could end up going ahead and scratching on the finish. So just little things like this that just aren't thought out, or the fact that like this is sort of rounded off and this sort of sets out higher than the rest of this. Again, small little things, but it's little things that with other big design firms like Wii and even Best Tech, you just wouldn't be running into these type of issues. So that's really what I dislike. I mean, the knife itself, really, again, it's not terrible, but I mean, it's just little things. It's just sort of that generic Kaiser, like, oh, this is a really high quality knife, okay? But it's just like nothing jumps out and makes it special. And that's what really kind of runs into what's absolutely rubbish. I hardly ever say anything's rubbish on my knife reviews, but this one I'm really gonna let have it. The biggest issue with this knife right here is just the meh factor, right? The first thing is that the action is soulless. It's very easy to actuate. This would be a great knife if somebody wanted a flipper, but then they're like, maybe don't have a lot of coordination, maybe they're like a little bit more elderly or something like that. This would be a great knife for that. You can also flick, slow roll, which some people say you can't. You can also flick it, you saw me do it, but you can't finger flick, which is something that, again, is more of a dislike. I should have put it in there, but now I'm thinking of it. But it does allow you to kind of pinch out like that. But the action, back to that, is just, it's smooth. It is not clicky, is what like Nick Shabazz or Metal Complex said. And I think the easier way to describe this, because that did make sense, is that with this, it's almost like the detent is like oval shaped, right? So what this means is even if I put pressure on the lock bar interface and I actuate it, I can easily flick the knife. And that might be good for some people, again, somebody who's not such a knife person or just wants a knife that they just, touch the flipper tab and it opens up. But it doesn't open up with this crazy aggression, this authority. You don't preload and then whop like it is with, some knives like like my Bedford, for example. But that is a big old flipper tab, so of course it would. But there's a lot of other flippers, even the Civivi Elementum with its small little flipper really has a fun, authoritative opening where it just sort of builds charges. There's this sort of pantomime and theater that goes along with it. And with this, it's very much like it goes along with the rest of the knife. It's just like the math factor, right? The way the knife is finished, the grinds, the way the anodization is done, the way just, again, the action is. I mean, everything is like good, right? It's really good. It's kind of a situation where it's kind of like a Chrysler 300C, right? It's like, yes, it's nicer than like maybe a standard average car, and maybe you could get like nice leather in it, but it's kind of like meh if you compared it to something else. If you got like the big performance version, it's meh compared to its Charger brother that has more of a aggressive and crazy designs, and you can have all these fun colors and a wide body and hood scoops and all this stuff, or if you got like a Mustang, or if you wanted to go with something more sort of sporty, you'd go with I digress. It's just very much a meh knife, and that's just the way that you'd look at it. Again, there are some cool things. Like I said, the milling is cool. That it's not just, hey, we're gonna make a round slab of titanium, but they like put some thought into it, and it's not an uncomfortable knife. But again, it just goes back to, maybe somebody, this is gonna light their fire. But for me, this is just a knife that it just doesn't do it for me. And I think that's the most rubbish thing of all, is the fact that, I got this knife and I instantly knew, like, this knife has so many goods, but it's soulless. Even sometimes Full House can be good, but to me, this is just, no. So, I don't know if this is something that is every knife or just this one in particular. Again, I can't comment too much. Again, I also try to come without as little bias as possible, but I do feel like I have a little bit of bias with this knife just because of how much of a disappointment it is. So do kind of keep that in mind, but I am coming through with all these different things. Again, it's decent behind the edge, not hyper thin, but not super thick as well. I'd probably kind of compare this to, I don't know, something like a, I had to guess something, kind of like, your average Kaiser, like a weed that's a little bit thicker or something like that, but it's not a hollow grind either, just a flat grind that comes to this low flat. So, it's not necessarily a bad knife, but again, I guess I don't need to beat a dead horse here. You sort of get my opinion on the thing. Plus, I don't like this sort of Kaiser design, finishing that Kaiser ends up going ahead and using. This definitely feels a lot like those knives that have also just sort of felt a little bit like it's really nice, but when other knives have like just that little extra level of polishing. I guess it's kind of like if you've ever had an Orient watch, and it's like, it's a nice watch, and some people absolutely love them, right? And there is different levels of them, or the real damn thing. Sorry. Passionate about my XKX, but I digress. That's basically it. Of course, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them in the comment below, and I'd appreciate if you like this video that you give it a like and you subscribe, as I am a small channel and I'm aggressively trying to grow and hopefully hit 1,000 subscribers by June. Of course, most importantly, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this channel when there are so many good content creators out there that you could be watching instead. So anyways, I appreciate you taking time in your day to watch the video. Hope everybody has a great start to March, and take care and be safe. Peace.